So this right here is my DVMega Hotspot. I know hotspots are very controversial, so why do I have one? Well, like many areas in the United States, most people tend to default to DMR. Personally, I do not own okay, I can't say that. I own a DMR radio. I just don't ever participate in DMR. I have an Anytone 878, which I think is like the go-to that everyone uses for quality DMR radios. And it's better than I thought. I'll get to a review of that eventually. But I bought this because I wanted to do fusion. We do not have a fusion repeater in my area. I started with the AC radios. Excuse me. My, I guess, Elmer mentor is a gentleman named Jim, AC9EZ. And the first time I was ever introduced to radios, he set up his FT450. I don't know. Someone will correct me down in the comments. He set that up in Michigan, and he was wearing a Yaesu hat. So coming into amateur radio, I had only ever heard of one name, and that was Yaesu. Well, and then of course Baofeng, because if you look up amateur radio, it's the first result you get off of Amazon, which is where everyone goes to. I apologize for the shaky video too. I can't find my regular setup, and I'm set up on a TV tray that my wife and I use to hold our tablets for when we do Zwift. And so that's why like this is all shaky, because this is a cheap arm that made out of Chinesium. And so it's not very great quality. But this hotspot, I got this because I wanted to get involved in digital voice. I wanted to kind of branch out and get involved and see what is digital voice about. And in order to do that, I needed to have a radio, mostly because Wires X is not a feature around here. We have a fusion repeater. Unfortunately, it sits quiet most days. I apologize for all the coughing. I have gastric reflux and I just ate. We have a fusion repeater that sits quiet most days. I put out my call sign on it on analog, no one responds. I put out my call sign on digital, no one responds. And so if you want to talk to people in your area, a lot of times you're going to need a hotspot like this. Now, you're probably going to say, Adam, your hotspot looks different than the DVMega that I found online that I got from Gigaparts, and that's because this is the case that it comes with. Not saying that this isn't bad. This is actually really good quality plastic, and it fits on top of it like this-ish, right? So why did I remove this? This is actually a case that goes on all 6 sides. There is 0 airflow inside of this case. Now this is a Raspberry Pi 3 that is underneath of this case. So there's a Raspberry Pi 3 underneath of here. Now, while Raspberry Pi 3s aren't exactly known for their cutting edge power, one of the things that happens with them is that they do generate heat. And this was sitting, I have this in my house, sitting at around 50 to 55 Celsius, which is a little toasty. Sometimes it would get up into the 60s, but that was really, really rare. Now, heat kills electronics. Heat will kill all electronics in the end. I just bumped the table. I apologize again. Heat will kill all electronics. And so I'm like, all right, well, it's not too bad, but if someone had this in their car, it would definitely get really hot. And so I put one of these on the processors. I opened it up and I put one of these little heat sinks on the processors. And that got it down to like high 40s, low 50s. So it kind of kept it around that area, and that made me a little bit more comfortable. But I wanted to make sure that this was going to last a long time. So I put a little heat sink on top of this, the finals here. But then I added this armor case. I've noticed ever since, so I added the armor case and then I went to AmericaLink. Now, AmericaLink is known for having 400 or more people in it at any time. So I set it to AmericaLink and I was like, let's see how hot this boy gets. The highest I got it up to is 37. So I recommend getting the armor case. Now, I had to add this little plastic bracket in. Granted, it's not screwed into anything except for the board, but the reason I had to add it in, along with 2 of those risers, is because if you don't, there's so much weight on this, including with the antenna pressing down right here, that it'll actually cause this upper board to sag downward. And so I added, yes, it came crooked like that. I didn't do that. So I added this bracket back to it. The bracket normally comes with it, and it actually fits. You could see how the screws would go through that bracket down into the, like through those 2 screw holes and hold this bracket so it'll hold it down. But unfortunately, this case, the holes that don't go all the way through, they come through from the bottom. But this does keep it a lot cooler. I'm very happy with it right now. I also think it looks I mean, it looks a little Frankenstein, right? It looks a little Frankenstein. I like armor cases. Over that way is my Volumio, which a Volumio server, which is a Raspberry Pi 4 gigabyte model with an armor case on it, no active cooling, and it still gets pretty warm. My walk around Raspberry Pi uses an armor case on it, mostly because I don't want any moving parts. There's a risk that it could get damaged. But how does this function overall? Well, it comes with a micro SD card, and it's a SanDisk, which actually isn't too bad, right? I didn't know SanDisk is owned by Western Digital, but it has a SanDisk card in it, so it's not some cheap card made out of Chinesium. Even though, yes, SanDisk is made in China, there is quality control on it. And so you have it comes pre-installed with Pi-Star on it. Pi-Star is a great software. Almost every hotspot uses it, but I'm very happy with DVMega. If you buy this, I would suggest that you get the armor case, or at a minimum, these little heat sinks, just so that you can prevent this thing from cooking itself. Granted, Raspberry Pi 3 stuff is becoming harder and harder to find since it's been out of, well, I mean, the parts aren't being produced for it outside of the parts produced on the Raspberry Pi website. So I would suggest that you try to, if you get this, think about getting either the Pi Zero model, because those parts are still produced, or putting a Pi 4 underneath of it. I don't know if you can get this hat, hardware attached on top. I don't know if you can get that separate. I'm sure you can. I know you can buy some of them, but they're made by, you know, Star Value Tech, with tech spelled TEC, so you know it's, you know, some cheap brand somewhere that there's going to be no customer support. DVMega, there's customer support. You know, you can reach out to them. I've reached out to them before. They're very responsive. I actually really enjoy the conversation that I had with them. But there is my review of the DVMega Hotspot. Would I recommend that you get it? I'm not going to give this a scale of like 0 through 10, but I would say, would I get this? Yes. I think it is pretty expensive. I think you could do without the plastic case. But if you can find one of these, they're kind of expensive, but I think that for what you get, it's well worth it. And you know, the customer support is the big thing that you're paying for. So highly recommend the DVMega Hotspot over some like cheap one that you're going to find everywhere else. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. But other than that, stay safe out there.